Welcome to episode 109 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. As always, I am one of your hosts, Noah, joined today with the birthday boy himself, Brandon. Happy birthday, I guess.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
I'm good. I'm starting to feel real old,
Do anything
23.
special other than work?
I did not. I worked. Now we got our baseball tournament, so we'll see how that goes. But other than that, it's been a pretty calm
Normal day.
birthday.
I
Oh,
guess
that's
that's
what
what
happens,
happens
I
when you
guess.
turn 30, eh?
Yeah, that and middle and middle of the week birthdays.
Yeah, true. But yeah, we're still in the dog day. Or I guess I was about to say we might only have but one more episode. But are you gonna be in North Bay next episode?
Um, I guess it depends what time we record. I'm leaving that day.
Yeah, so I'll have one more. I leave the day it comes out. I'll be here Thursday night, and then I work a half day Friday, and then I'll be in North Bay mid-afternoon on Friday next Friday.
Yeah, just thinking about it, Thursday's gonna be pretty busy for me, so we might have to record early.
That's fine. I can make
Like
that
on
work.
like on like Wednesday or something.
Yeah, I can make that work. You guys heard it here first. Our recording time now.
There
But
you
yeah,
go. Now you know.
before we get around to that, we're getting to the end of summer, which means that we're about two weeks away from the start of the NFL season. 2 weeks today on the actually 2 weeks on the date to the date today.
I know it's coming quick.
Um, which also means that NHL training camp is coming, or they're about to do some the prospect challenge in Buffalo. We'll get into prospect trades later, as there was one today. As we get into this episode, but yeah, we're starting to sort of get back into the sporting time, which is kind of cool. Obviously, you still have baseball, but the Jays suck. So I know you haven't
Yeah,
watched very many games.
yeah.
I've still unfortunately suffered myself through a couple games this year. I'm actually going to a live game this weekend. They'll probably lose, knowing the way they play. And my
We're
luck.
also
So
exactly 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL season.
that's what I said.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about the prospect game.
No, I said at the start. I said we're 2 weeks to the date of the first NFL game.
Oh, okay.
I said it like
Yes.
a minute ago, but yeah, the Chiefs and Ravens kick us off 2 weeks from today, which is cool. I didn't realize, like, whenever the first preseason game came on, I was like, okay, we're still like 4 or 5 weeks away, and then I looked, it's like first week of September. It's like, damn, I didn't realize that it started first week of September. I feel like that's earlier than usual, is it not? Or am I just like I feel like it's usually second or third week of September, like not the very first week.
Yeah, I actually don't know. You could be right. It
'Cause I know
does,
this
it
was the
felt
first
early
year.
to me too.
I know this was the first year they've shortened the preseason to 3 games.
Yeah,
And
it felt
that
early to me too. So maybe it's a week early.
maybe it's a week early because of that, but yeah. Let's get into, I guess we could talk about football talk quickly. I have one thing to bring up. Atlanta stayed busy and they re-signed AJ Terrell today to a 4-year extension. 68 guaranteed, 480 mil. It makes him like the second highest paid cornerback ever. I don't remember who the first one is, to be honest with you. It's somebody that's playing right now.
Um, I couldn't tell you.
But yeah, that's just some
Don't
minor
know.
news. I think it's obviously, as a Falcons fan, I'm happy they re-signed him because he was a free agent after this year, especially with how young and good he is. But yeah, nothing sort of major there. Um,
Huge trade. Commanders trading Jahan Dotson to the Eagles,
huge.
giving him to a rival.
Yeah, I
He's
didn't.
pretty young though. They're giving
I
up on
know,
him
but
early.
it sounded like he was. If they didn't trade him, he was going to get cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the
He
stuff.
wasn't that bad.
I guess he didn't look that good in training camp, or he had a bad training camp or something, and he
Okay,
was sort
fair
of
enough.
getting pushed off. So if they didn't trade him, I don't think he was going to make their roster, which is kind of crazy because he was like a second or third round pick a couple years ago,
That's
and I
what I
know
mean.
he showed flashes in his first 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. Oh well, weird,
Must
eh?
have just had a bad training camp, but yeah. Speaking of trade news, going to the NHL, there was a bit of a, I guess not a weird one, but a sort of a random one. Today I was working, and all of a sudden I get a text from Brandon, and he's like, "Ben's making moves." I'm like, "Oh no, what happened?" And the very first thing I saw when I opened Twitter is Braden Yeager is in the trade. I'm like, "Oh my God, what did they do?" I'm like,
Yeah.
did Dubas panic and make an all-in trade?" And then I see it's for Rutger McGorty. And it took me, honestly, at first, I didn't know. I texted you, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this because I don't know. For me, I really was high on Jagger. Still think he's gonna be a great player, but he's like the first time he was like the first prospect or first player in like 10 years where like Pittsburgh actually had like a hyped up prospect that was like supposed to be good. I guess I can call him a blue chip prospect. So I was actually really excited to see what he could do. I knew he wasn't going to make the team this year or maybe not even next year, but like the next couple of years he was, he was going to make this team eventually. um, so like the very first thing I saw on Twitter was Braden Yeager is in the trade. I was like, oh my God, what did they do? I chased for Rucker McGorty, and I sort of sat on it a bit. And the longer I sort of thought about it, the more I liked it. Um, Rutger is road ready. He's gonna be most likely on the Pens team this year. Um, and the when I think about it, I think that he has a higher ceiling than Yeager does. Um, Potential wise. I also found it kind of funny how they were both back-to-back years. They were the 14th overall picks. Like the 14th overall pick got traded for another 14th overall pick, which was just a
Hmm.
coincidence. Um, but yeah, I don't know what you think, but about McGroarty and Yager, but I think that the trade, the longer I thought, the floor is probably about the same for them. I think they're both could be middle six wingers, but I think that the ceiling for McGroarty Rutger McGroarty is higher. He has a higher ceiling than maybe a Braden Yeager has.
Yeah, so I was kind of confused initially as to trade, just as you were. I heard that like when I first texted you that I saw that the Pens got Rutger McGroarty, it didn't yet have what they were sending back. So obviously we both think that the Penguins could make the playoffs. They could squeak in there for sure, but I don't think either of us like realistically thinks they can win a Stanley Cup this year with the roster they currently have. So what I kind of thought when I heard that Rutger McGroarty was heading to the Pens is that okay, they're doing a I even texted you this, they're gonna try and do a quick mini rebuild before Crosby and Malkin retire, right? And
Yep.
Letang. So I thought they were gonna try and do like a 1 year quick, pick up a couple prospects, see if they can grow. And then you hear it's for Jagger, and you're basically, like you said, you're basically trading your best prospect for who is now your best prospect. And I do agree. I do think Rucker McGroarty's better. Obviously, McGroarty will be able to enter the lineup this year. He did leave the Jets because he wasn't getting an NHL spot. So I feel like if the Penguins are trading for this guy, it's because he will be on the opening night roster. And I do think the Penguins could really use this, a scoring guy. Like you said, maybe if the Penguins really want to see what he's built like, put him with Crosby, see if he can light the lamp as a rookie. Um, but yeah, I do like the move because he's NHL ready. But at the same point, you're kind of just trading a really good prospect for a really good prospect. So I don't know how much it really boosts their winning chances compared to what it was before, but overall, I like the trade.
Yeah. So my thought whenever I text you that, this maybe he plays with Sid is because that's been sort of a Penguins need. They've needed a
Yeah.
top line player. Like they have the second line with Malkin, because Malkin and Bunting worked well last year together, after the trade deadline, and they have Raquel there, and then they've had sort of a hole at first line winger with Crosby since Gensel left. I know Drew O'Connor did play really well there last year, but I was kind of hoping that they were going to sign sort of a player that can go in that role. And I think this trade is exactly what they need. Not that I don't think Drew O'Connor couldn't play on that line because he did have a really good year last year being up and down the lineup, but I think he's a perfect middle six guy that can get put into a top line role if needed. Um, do I think this makes Pittsburgh a championship team or even a playoff team? Yes and no. No, more for the playoffs. I think that they can. I don't know. Me being maybe hopeful. I think that they could honestly make the playoffs with this team they have because they're one thing the Penguins have always had trouble with is a bottom six, and they've signed and traded for like there's like 9 guys that can play in their bottom six right now, which is what they've sort of lacked the last couple years. So if we don't see major regressions from Sid Malkin and maybe this McGroarty kid comes in and puts up 50 to 60 points in his rookie year playing with Sid the whole time, I think Pittsburgh could be sneaky. Sneaky cup contenders, no, but sneaky playoffs wild card, yes. Like I don't know. You might think otherwise, and I totally agree. I just still don't maybe see them making the playoffs this year, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they snuck into it.
No, does it improve their chance of making the playoffs? Yes, because was Jaeger, like you said, was Jaeger playing on your roster this year? No. Is Rutger going to play on your roster this year? Yes. And he was 14th overall for a reason. He's shown it through his play like in the minors. He looks good. So I think, and if you, it doesn't matter who you put, if you put a skilled young guy beside Crosby, he's going to put up points. So for this year, it will help their team because he'll be better than Jagger because Jagger wouldn't have played at all. So I do think they could definitely squeak into a playoff spot. You got teams like the Islanders and Washington and Ottawa and teams like that to contend with, but I to say that Pittsburgh couldn't beat any of those teams out is just not right. Like they could definitely take that last spot.
Yeah, and McGroarty refused to sign in Winnipeg, and obviously Dubas making this trade, he probably had already had permission to talk to Rutger, and I only think this trade's being made if Rutger says, "Yeah, I'm gonna sign with you," and obviously the second that that sort of went through, McGroarty signed his entry level deal. Um, oh my God, what was I gonna say? It just blanked me. Oh, I was going back. I remember a couple episodes ago, I'm still against the whole players refusing to sign.
Yeah.
Like, I
And it's
know
just them
McGroarty is
college
now on my
kids.
favorite team, so I have to like him and cheer for him. But same with the Cutter Goche situation. I hate that players have this ability to say, I'm not going to sign with you, trade me, or else you're just going to run out of rights for me. Like I don't know. Like they're in the 1% of people that make the NHL, and now they're gonna not sign with the team that drafted them before they even played one NHL game. I don't know what your opinion is, but I completely disagree with it, and I don't think it should be allowed.
No, I totally agree. Like free agency is there for players, for experienced players that have been in the league. They've put in their time. You deserve the right to choose where you want to go. But for these young kids, a team is putting time and effort and hope and energy into you, and that's what the draft is for. It's for bottom feeder teams to try and get better, right? It's to try and make the league even. And I know like Logan Cooley didn't do it, but for example, say he held out, like where does Arizona go from there? They just stay bad forever. So I mean, it worked out for the Jets because they were already pretty decent when this happened. But for bottom feeder teams, if more players start to do this, it's going to make the league pretty imbalanced. And I feel like as a young kid, you should just be thankful that a team drafted you, and you should go
I
play out
agree, totally
your
agree.
3 years, and then at that point you're restricted free agency. You have a little bit of leeway, but you should definitely play out your 3 years with your team and just be thankful they gave you the opportunity and chance. I don't like it either personally.
Yeah, no, for sure. And a lot of other people are saying, "Oh, like I feel bad for Jaeger. He's going to Winnipeg. He's from Saskatchewan. Like
Yeah.
that he's from the province. If you're not from Canada, we call them provinces, but Alberta, or sorry, not Alberta. Manitoba and Saskatchewan are right beside each other. So sure, is Jaeger probably upset that his idol was Sid growing up, and he's not going to have the chance to do them. Sure, but this is probably he's probably like not that he's okay with it. Obviously, it sucks to be traded, but he's probably like, hey, I'm moving to it closer to home. More family can maybe once he does make the show, more family can come and see it. Like this is mainly Penguins fans on Twitter that are like, oh my God, I feel bad for Jaeger, but he's going to a team that I guess is probably it could have honestly been his favorite team growing up because it's probably the closest team to him geographically wise.
Yeah, it'd be close. And also the way you got to think about it is like you said, he wasn't going to make the roster this year.
He's
Uh,
not going to make Winnipeg's either. Like
no, I'm not saying that, but it's not like he would have played like in later years, sure, and like Sidney Crosby's farewell tour, he might have played with him, but it's not like he was going to play with Sid a bunch anyways. And now Pittsburgh obviously wanted them because they drafted him, but the way you got to look at it is Winnipeg traded for him, so it's not like they don't want him. They're going to give this kid all the opportunity in the world in the minors. And Winnipeg's in a pretty similar position to Pittsburgh, where they're an aging team and spots are going to become available. Just Rutger McGroarty didn't have the patience to wait, where I feel like Jagger wasn't expecting to play NHL time this year anyways, so he's definitely going to get his chances in years to come. And they should they should still be okay. They got a good roster. They're just aging a little bit. So
Yeah, for
I think
sure.
it's a good situation.
Yeah, it should be good to sort of for him. I think yeah.
Yeah, go Penguins.
Go Pens.
And we could talk about another one. We could talk about the Line A trade. That
Oh
was a big
yes.
one.
Um I don't know. There were so many people, there were so many different reactions to it on Twitter. I don't know. I know you're not on Twitter much, but that's where I get all my news and all my stuff like that. Like all
Yeah.
my that's where it gets broken first by Elliot Friedman and them. People were so confused. They're like, "What?" Like they're just bringing up Pittsburgh fans like, "You just couldn't give that up." He's making 8.7 mil and hasn't played more than 10 games in 2 years. Like
Yeah.
he's making, I don't know. This it doesn't make sense for most teams that didn't have cap space because obviously you saw what sort of the Blue Jackets gave up. The Blue Jackets had to give Montreal second just so they didn't have to retain any of Line A's cap.
Yeah. No, it was a heavy price to pay, but I might be in the minority here, but I'm honestly saw this trade and I love it for both sides. I know it's a lot to give up if you're Columbus, but this guy has vocally come out and said he doesn't want to play with you. And I feel like I know Columbus has come out and said they only because they're trying to rebuild and they've been pretty dumpster fire the last couple of years, but they said they're trying to rebuild and they said they want people that want to be there to be on their team. So they're kind of showing people, hey, like if you want to be here, we'll give you opportunity. If you don't want to be here, well, we're not the home for you then. And they gave him up. They gave a lot up. But the I can't remember his first name, but Harris is the last name.
Jordan,
Jordan Harris, it's not like he's a bad player, right? He's a young defenseman. Defensemen normally take a couple extra years to grow into their form, but so you obviously haven't gotten the full potential out of him yet, but he's only 24. He's kind of more of a stay-at-home defenseman, which is why if you a lot of people that probably searched him up were like that's all they got back, but he's kind of a stay-at-home defenseman. So I feel like his play is better than his numbers show. And again, he's young. And then for the Montreal side, you're not a great team. You got cap to work with for the next couple of years because your young guys aren't making anything. They're on league men. Line A wanted to be there, which is huge, I think. He wanted a new change. And you and me talked beforehand. We both think like people have kind of given up on Line A, but he was a second overall pick and looked really good in Winnipeg. If he can stay healthy, he could easily score 50 goals in this league again. He's
easily.
just got
Yeah,
to stay.
I think was it at golf you were talking about it?
Yeah,
Were we
yeah,
golfing? I
yeah.
think I remember we agreed. I said we both said when he's healthy, he's a 40 goal scorer. Like
Hmm.
it's like I think that the fact that he hasn't played in 2 years, um, sort of made people's opinions on him a bit different. But you got to remember, even on a like a bad team, he still scores goals. He's got that one thing, that one sort of skill, and that's a goal score.
And the thing is, it's not like Columbus where he was the guy alongside Johnny Gaudreau. I don't know if you've seen projected lines, but all of them have him on the second line, which is perfect. They're like obviously their first line Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky. You're not breaking that up, right? So to put him on a second line on a team that has a super bright future but not ready to compete yet, or he can, even though he's still pretty young, he will be considered one of the vets on the forward side of the lines with Gallagher and Josh Anderson and pieces like that. Um, I think it's a really good situation for him, honestly. So I think this is a great trade for Montreal where if it doesn't work out, oh well, like you have the cap right now anyways, because all your young guys are on league men. And if it does work out, you have a 40, 30, 40, 50 goal scorer on your team. And then for Columbus, you just get a restart. Obviously, you paid a lot of money to this guy. You get the money off the books. He didn't want to be there. You get a good young defenseman. Sure, you had to part ways with a second round pick, but you get a refresh. So I think it works out for both teams.
Yeah, and I know Montreal, I don't think they're a playoff team this year.
No,
But they're
I think
starting
they
they
leapfrogged Buffalo. I don't think they're the worst team in this division anymore.
yeah, I don't need I was gonna get to that, but I think that they're maybe a year out. Like I think one more year, we saw Slavkovsky's jump last year. We know what Nick Suzuki is. We know Caulfield's a goal scorer. Maybe Alex Newhook, Kirby Dock's coming back. If he can stay healthy, he's a decent player. They have that mate Logan Mayu kid he's gonna be decent. Lane Hudson looked great last year. Like they have guys. They have Mike Mathen, he's a solid D. Caden Gooley just got re-signed. Like I
Yeah.
think the one thing that they're missing is a goalie. I don't think Montembeau is the answer. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it really depends this year on how he grows. If he can
I know he's
potentially
only like 25, but
yeah.
I don't think he's the future of goaltending in that thing. Maybe they have a lot of assets. Maybe they're the team that swoops in and gets the scar off.
Yeah, but do you want him to be your starting goalie? I don't know.
I think on a team like this, he's shown enough in the AHL that I don't think
Yeah.
he needs to prove anymore in the AHL. I think he needs to get NHL reps. So
Oh, I
like
agree
we
too, but putting him right in the starting role might be
I mean, if you don't have to
a
put him in the starting
mistake.
role this year, but if you have a 1A, 1B situation with him and Montembeau, and then all of a sudden next year, if his numbers are good, you can put him as the 1A, and
Yeah,
then
fair
maybe
enough.
Montembeau is the 2, then I think that is good for the future. And because he's such a highly touted prospect and he's shown that he can sort of be this guy in the HL, I think you give him a shot.
Montreal does have a lot of
They
assets
have a
too,
lot
like
of
you said.
assets to work.
You're changing me on it. That actually could be pretty fun. And he's perfect age group to grow up with
That's
these
what I
guys.
mean. Like
So that could be
I just mentioned that I don't think they're a playoff team this year, but maybe in the years following.
yeah.
Um,
Makes sense because Ascroft did finally formally come out and said he is requesting a trade. So
yeah, because they were
um,
obviously sending him to, they went to send him to the AHL camp, and he said, yeah, I'm not reporting.
yeah, so he will be getting traded now where it's kind of been a rumor all off season and now he will be traded. So we'll
Yep.
just wait and see where that goes. Some other NHL news. The Edmonton Oilers did not match either contract and
Yeah,
did make
which
a lot of moves in the process.
I found that the not that the CC trade was even more confusing because he's not I don't think he's a great defenseman and he's making like 3.5 or 4.5. Um, but I thought they moved CC to at least sign one. I didn't think I kind of figured that Broberg was gone just based off that cap hit that St. Louis gave him. Not that I don't think he's never gonna be worth that much, but it just didn't make sense to me if you're Edmonton. But I thought that them sending CC to the Sharks meant that they were at least gonna bring back Dylan Holloway, which didn't come to fruition. Um, I actually don't mind it for Edmonton because they need all the cap space they can get this year to try to get Draisaitl extended.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And I feel like although they didn't totally replace the two players, I think they got worse versions of those players. Like they got Paul Cozen from
Former 10th overall pick.
yeah, from the Canucks who just didn't work out there, right? They got such a stacked roster, he couldn't find a spot. And although Edmonton's stacked, it's very top heavy, so he will definitely find probably a third line role on this team. Where he's definitely not as good as Holloway, but can probably play. He will play in the role Holloway played, and we'll just see if he can adapt. And
Yeah.
then in the CC
Oh, go
trade, they
ahead.
got Emberson, who's also a young defenseman who isn't as offensive as Broberg, but can definitely play that third line role that Broberg was playing at a
Yeah.
cheaper contract. So they kind of saved money. They did replace players, both of them being worse, but you got to save money somehow to sign Draisaitl and Bouchard. So we'll see if that
I know
goes.
that sort of Edmonton was it. I know they were in the obviously they're in the Stanley Cup final this year. They were one game away from winning or 2 goals away from winning. But do you think that this year is their sort of last year if they don't do well this year? Like if Drysdale doesn't sign an extension, is this their last year in a championship window?
You could definitely make an argument with that because even if they don't win, and like even if let's say Draisaitl stays, Draisaitl is going
He's
to
gonna get
be
14 mil.
he's going to be the highest paid player in the NHL. Bouchard is going to be the highest paid defenseman in the NHL.
Just not that they don't deserve it, just because of the way the cap's going.
Yeah, exactly. Like every top 15 player that signs a contract will end up being the highest paid. It's like quarterbacks. Like Jordan Love's the highest paid quarterback right now, but as soon as Dak gets paid, Dak will be the highest paid quarterback. Then who's ever next will be the
It's just gonna
highest.
keep
Yeah,
getting everybody's just gonna
just
keep
keeps
getting
going.
replaced. It's just gonna keep getting
Um,
replaced.
yeah, like right now, currently Matthews is the highest paid player. Is he the best player in the NHL? No, but he was the most recent top guy to sign a contract, right? So that's just how it goes. And to have, we've seen it with Toronto, to have that many people signed to that high of contracts, you can't fill out your roster, which has been Edmonton's problem for such a long time. And it feels like this year, funny enough that you brought the question up, this year is the most complete roster I think they will be bringing in. Being able to bring in Skinner and they brought in what's his
Arvidsson.
name? Ardvinson. This is the most filled roster they've had. So I do feel like you have a good point where this is kind of their last give it chance, like total cup contender, because even if everybody stays, you're not going to be able to fill out a roster of good NHL players with that money you're putting up to the star players.
Yeah, and saying that, Skinner signed a 1 year deal.
Yep.
Arvidsson signed a 2 year deal. So I think not that obviously these guys are good players, but they're not like game changers. Sorry, I don't know how to word that, but you know what I mean. I think it sort of shows that these players agree with the sort of the window that Edmonton's in, that hey, I don't want to be here, maybe for too long. I know Skinner's only 30, but he's never played a playoff game in his life. Like he's the longest player to never play a playoff game
Which
active.
will definitely change.
I definitely will change, but these guys aren't sort of they weren't willing to, maybe either Edmonton wasn't willing to commit to them because they have to sign Drysdale, or these guys weren't wanting to commit to these long deals, or maybe like more than 2 years because they see, Drysdale's coming up, Bouchard's coming up. These guys probably won't be able to pay me what I want. So I'm sort of gonna see if I can win a cup here and bet on myself and get a new contract, which I totally agree with their sort of idea. The one thing that does scare me for Edmonton, if this is sort of they're entering their, this might be their last years. They don't have many, guys in the pipeline. So
No, they really don't.
if sort of Draisaitl leaves, obviously you have McDavid. You're gonna. It's the same thing with Crosby. Pittsburgh's not gonna be a bottom 10 team with Crosby. You're not gonna be a bottom team with McDavid on the roster, no matter how long he's there, no matter if he's the only good player there. Um, but could we see maybe in the next 2 or 3 years some more dark days in Edmonton? I know they've been through a lot recently in the last 12 to 15 years based off how bad they've been. But will it sort of the future of Edmonton, if they don't get a Draisaitl contract done, will it be sort of dark? Also, before we sort of get off maybe onto a different thing, this nurse contract is it's screwing them.
Oh yeah. But it's not even their fault. Like Nurse was did you was it a terrible contract when he first signed it? I don't think so. He was a pretty offensive guy. Bouchard hadn't come into his own. I think what screwed at obviously it didn't screw Edmonton because you got a top four defenseman in the league, but Bouchard breaking in and coming into his own, taking all the opportunities from Nurse. Like Nurse used to be the top power play guy. He was on the ice 30 minutes, not 30 minutes, but you know what I mean? He was the guy with the most ice time. And Bouchard has taken all that role from him. Do I think Nurse is an $8 million defenseman? No. But I do think in the right situation, he's still a pretty good defenseman, although I just don't think that spot's on Edmonton. I don't think he fits in Edmonton personally. Um, yeah, that contract's tough just because they don't have any money to save.
No, no, that's honestly, you could look back if they don't get a Draisaitl extension. Is Nurse a $9.25 million defenseman? Not even close. I don't even know if he's a $5 million player the way he's been playing. Maybe I'm a bit more harsh on him than most people, but
I think he's a $5 million defenseman.
okay. So let's say he's a $5 million player. You got 4.25 mil there that you're just sort of wasting.
Yep,
That you could
100%.
be going to Draisaitl. This contract could be the main reason why they aren't able to extend Draisaitl.
Do you know how many more years offhand?
6. Like he was only in the second year of it this year or something.
Yeah, I know it's a lot. It's so tough.
He's getting
It,
paid.
it was just it was just terrible timing for Edmonton because that year he signed the contract, he was the guy, and then Bouchard basically came the year after,
So he's in
right?
year 3 of 8.
Yeah, like Bouchard,
He is UFA in 2030.
like Nurse was basically the guy for the first year of his contract, and then
Yeah,
Bouchard the past two
definitely.
years has been the
His
guy, and it
his
makes it
agent his agent did money or did
yeah.
like life. He did magic for that contract. But yeah,
It's unfortunate for Edmonton because if the previous contract was a year longer or Bouchard came a year earlier, Nurse's contract wouldn't be that, right? Because he wouldn't have had all that.
I don't know if Nurse would be an Edmonton Oiler.
Yeah, yeah, that's potential, which might have been the best case for both
Could have
sides.
been the best case. But yeah,
That's tough for sure. Um, I don't know if you have anything else. I got one more thing.
go for it. You got 7.5 minutes left on this
Seven.
timer.
Well, speaking of seven, there's a lot of sevens in this. We have 7 minutes left, and the Seattle Kraken signed Beniers to a seven
Veneers.
by seven.
7 by 7. It was seven
Seven
point
by
one
seven
four.
point one four.
One
Yeah,
four.
yeah.
Why the one? Why could it be 1.5? Don't ask me. I
It's got
actually
to be
I don't mind the
some.
contract. He's obviously a former Calder winner. He's shown what he can do in his rookie year. Um, he's a great defensive forward. Couldn't really find his offensive game last year, but I think that'll come as he sort of progresses um, into his sort of prime years. So I am actually okay with the contract. I think it'll look a lot better if or I think it'll look like a steal of a contract if he does develop that offensive game. But I think he's a great second center on Seattle, and he could even develop into a first center if his sort of development stays on track.
Yeah, it's a good deal for Seattle in multiple ways. Like Beniers, obviously, like you said, he's got all the talent in the world. He was their first ever franchise draft pick, won the Calder Trophy. He didn't have a great year last year on the offensive side, but he did take a big leap, like you said, defensively. I'm just looking at his stats right now. He went from basically a 42% face-off winner to a 48% face-off winner just in his second year. So his defense and his face-off winning ability is growing. I think he's going to turn into a really good two-way player. Um, and a 21-year-old, it's going to be tough for him not to live up to a $7 million deal by the time the contract's over and what the cap is. If the cap keeps growing, I think it's going to be tough for him not to live up to that.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's almost a discount, to be
Yeah,
honest.
like
Um,
we're looking at a lot of these deals, like including the Slavkovsky one.
yeah.
That's just the first one. Like some of these deals are gonna look like the Jack Hughes one that he signed like a couple of years ago looks like one of the best contracts ever. Like I know we're not trying to get off Beniers, but some of these deals, especially with the cap going up, look are gonna look really good in a couple of years.
Yeah, a lot of the young guys that have signed big deals, it works out for them, obviously, but I think they're taking a pay cut, and I think it's going to look really good. Slavkovsky, Beniers, Byfield,
Yeah,
all those guys, they're going
yeah,
to look
for
really
sure.
good. And then, like, for Beniers, I don't even know if he was trying to do this, but I feel like even at a young age, he's kind of a leader on this team. And I think by taking the discount, even if it's not a huge discount, I think it still is. I think it shows that he's like, here, organization, I'm going to take a little bit less. If you make the years longer, I'll take a little bit less. You go surround me with some players. Let's try and rebuild this. Let's make a good
Let's
team
get
here.
back into the playoffs. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what he's looking for, and I think
yeah, for sure.
hopefully the team will ride that and they can get back to that first year where the second year where they made the playoffs and made a run actually.
Yeah, for sure. I think we'll end it there. I got nothing left unless you got something. We got to get to a baseball game in
Yeah.
somewhat soon.
I only
If
had
you,
the Hughes being the cover athletes, but that's
yes,
it.
that's
It is what it is.
it is what it is.
It's cool.
I'm probably not going to buy the game. So,
No, me neither. It's the same every year.
all right. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to never miss a weekly episode, and we will be back hopefully next week, assuming everything works out.
Yep. See ya.